Okay, this video is Happy Father's Day to my Irish father, and this is my grandfather from Ireland. He was national champion 9 times of Ireland in bicycle riding, and he was also a member of the IRA, fighting against the British who abused the Irish quite badly. So here he is, my grandfather, Tom Rogers, winning another national championship, and there's one of my great uncles, it's Uncle Frank, who helped him out, and they both here's one of his medals for winning the bicycle races of Ireland, my grandfather. And him and my grandfather and my great uncle there were both fought against the British for the freedom of Ireland. And they were put in jail in Dundalk, Ireland. And then, luckily for them, my grandfather fell in love with a nurse. She fell in love with him. She had helped take care of the IRA soldiers when they had been injured, and she helped my grandfather to escape from the hospital when he was there, because he was shot by the British, as was my uncle, but he survived, and she helped him escape from this hospital here, and he actually fled to the United States for a couple of years. And here's actually the newspaper article about when Grandpa escaped from the British. Oops. I wanted to move my picture, not the slide. Here we go. So, Grandpa escapes from the British there. And she actually hit him for a while. And he would have ended up in jail, probably being killed by the British. So, lucky for him, she saved his life. And they ended up getting married and being real happy together. The British were terrible, the Irish. Just absolutely terrible. You know, there's no excuse for how awful they were. So here's their wedding picture. She was a big reader. She was really smart. You know, he was the big athlete. She was the big scholar. Her family was a bunch of scholars and teachers and stuff like that. And Ireland is really famous for having a lot of people that are real bookish, okay? So this is the book, How the Irish Saved Civilization by Thomas Cahill. It's an excellent book, very entertaining. Here's the most famous painting that's come out of Ireland, Meeting on the Turret Stairs by William Burton. And anyways, the Irish read a lot. They preserved all the ancient manuscripts, you know, coming especially out of Rome, some of them out of Greece. And they sort of helped maintain civilization during the Middle Ages. You know, of course, there's St. Patrick's who, came to Ireland and around the time of the 400s and whatnot. He did all kinds of great things for the Irish people. And here's St. Column of Donegal, or St. Columkill, or Column. And he really started a whole bunch of monasteries. They both did a tremendous amount for education in Ireland. And I show you that because my family comes out of this tradition. And here they are, Columkill was associated with making the Book of Kells, one of the great versions of the Bible with all the illustrations, and it kind of reminds you, like, remember Monty Python and the Holy Grail? They had all the, like, illustrated characters and stuff, and later on, Sergio Aragones for Mad Magazine in the corners of the margins sort of did something similar, but the art was magnificent, and they really sort of helped keep that knowledge alive. You know, in Ireland, you're poor, there's not much else to do. The British just brutalized them, and, wouldn't allow them even to learn how to read. And the Irish they compensated by having all these schools called the hedgerow schools, where they were taught. And all kinds of strange things happened. Like the story that my uncles told me was that the family's original name was McCrory. McCrory means son of the red-haired king. There's a lot of redheads in Ireland. And that then, there was a Norman conquest in 1066 when sort of like the French influence on Britain. And then that got transferred over to Ireland a little bit as well. And what I'm getting at is what I was told by my uncles, my great uncles, that the British basically said, screw you, the McCrorys, you're not the son of a red-haired king, you're just the red one. So rouge means like red makeup on the face. And so I was told that Rogers comes from rouge, and we're the red ones in that sense. There were a lot of redheads in my family. When my kid was born, he had red hair, and I was like, what is that? It better not be the mailman. So anyways, these were the hedgerow schools, meaning that around the hedgerows they would educate the kids. Often it was indoors, but that's the name that stuck with it, the hedgerow schools. And it kind of reminds me like of the Catholic schools in the United States starting after 1850, especially by Bishop Hughes from New York, was a way for them still to get educated, to maintain their Gaelic language, to maintain their Catholic traditions and the history of their country and their knowledge. The people needs the knowledge of their history. Helps them to understand themselves. And okay, this was my father's, one of the places This was actually his aunt's house, but his house was something similar in Dundalk. Here's in Bridge Street, and that tiny little place, just a few shelves. One of them that worked at a grocery store. I remember my father when he first went into the big grocery store in America, like when Cub Foods first opened, and he started crying because he knew what it was like to be near starvation. I went back to Ireland and visited the house that he grew up in. It was just a dirt floor. He's so poor he wouldn't have been able to go to school, but the Christian Brothers let him go to school. When he's a young guy, he looks kind of skinny to me. He don't look too powerful. He was a boxing champion, my father. Part of it was because his older brother picked on him. Part of it was because there was a gang that kind of picked on them called the Happy Valleyers. And so anyways, he was a pretty good boxer, but he said he had to quit, of course, because he said otherwise he knew he'd end up with head trauma. He ended up, being valedictorian of his high school class, so he got a scholarship to college. All the other boys in his town, this is a real small school. They wouldn't be able to go. So my family's pretty smart because I tell you that grandmother was a real smart lady, reading all the time. Her family. My dad was a doctor. One of his brothers was a doctor. The other one was an engineer physicist. And he was kind of the genius of them. But he ate too much. It's my Uncle Tommy. He ate too much meat and dairy. He ended up dying of a myocardial infarction, a heart attack at 51 years of age. But one thing I really learned from these guys is they all loved to read a lot, and they would talk about books. They were always arguing about books. So you want to talk about the bookish Irish, that's my family. A continuation like of, Colm Donegal, St. Columba. And there was books upon books upon books on all the bookshelves in my house. My father read more for sort of relaxation, pleasure, and he had a great admiration for the great scholars and writers of the past. And so that was passed on to me. When a man grows up, he reads books and he discusses books with other men. That was built into me from a very young age, and that tremendously helped me. I actually think that's one of the secrets. I never even took, my dad was a fuzzy foreigner compared to America. He didn't know anything about America or AP classes. I never even took honors classes in high school, but my father's example, every day he got up early in the morning, went to work, came home, got some exercise, walking the dog, and then he would read at night and listen to classical music. And listen to John McCormick and other Irish music. So it was built into me. That's what a man does. He works his butt off in the day and he reads at night. Okay? And also him being an athlete as a boxer kind of motivated me as a wrestler. So here he is as a young guy. Here, I'll get my picture out of here. He's a good-looking young guy. And here he is as a young Irish guy with a suit. And the people in Ireland, they wear suits all the time. They're dressed a lot better than Americans do by far. And here's my father with my mother. He was very happy. They had a wonderful marriage. He was very good to her. They were married all the way to the end of their lives. And we joked about Beauty and the Beast, in the sense that, he had been a boxer and he was kind of a tough guy. But he was really nice, my dad. You could almost never get him pissed off. The only thing that would piss him off is if we woke him up when he was asleep and he had to go to work early in the morning the next day. As a matter of fact, we would come home sometimes. We're kids that go out partying, socializing. And my mom, if she was mad at us, she would go, "Don't wake up your father. Don't wake up your father." We're kind of sneaking up the stairs. She's like, "Don't wake up your father." We're like, "Mom, shh, Mom, be quiet." She goes, "Don't wake up your father." Because she knew if he woke up, he'd be pissed off. Here's a wedding, And by the way, these are the biggest priests in the world. My parents are normal size. I think my dad's probably about, 5'9.5", but these priests are like giants. Okay. Anyways, my mom was a saint. He lucked out so much marrying her. It's not even funny. And they were very happy together. She was more extroverted and social. He was more the scholar, the bookish scholar. And it worked out perfect because they just complemented each other. Here's my dad going back to Ireland to visit his parents, and that's one of his brothers. And you can see that's the typical look at Ireland, all the rock walls around the farming areas. Oh, and here he's going back, and here's another one of his brothers. This is one of his brothers, Peter, who had a real nice farm, and we really enjoyed visiting him. Also had a dirt floor and the animals coming in the house. I saw my father's house, like I said, too. He had a dirt floor. That's my mom. I went back with my dad to visit in 1960. And that's one of my dad's other brothers. That's a friend. I don't know who she is. But anyways, really poor, shockingly poor. And my mom had majored in geography at the University of Chicago, and she had this knack for wanting to travel, and my dad kind of humored her. He'd go along and he'd be okay, and sort of she structured his entire social life. In all my years of knowing my father, he died when he was 87 years old. He never once ever picked up the telephone to make a social phone call that I ever saw in my whole entire life. Every social phone call he made, my mom had the phone book of all of his friends, knew the name of every single person in their family, all their birthdays. And they would have people over at our house plenty of times, but it was always my mom who invited them. My dad was just kind of bookish, introverted, scholarly, or super hard worker. And he was very wealthy. I mean, he was chief of 2 departments at 2 different hospitals. He's board certified in 2 different fields. He was just a real smart, hardworking guy. And my mom was sort of the social light of his life. She made everything, and she, made the house. It was the fun place to be. Our friends would love to come to our house because the way our house was, because of my mom. And my dad was always really nice, but he just didn't talk that much. He's funny when he talked, but he didn't talk that much. Here he is. He took us to Ireland when we were young. We don't even remember this, but, it's back in the early days. And then, because of my mom liked to travel, then my dad would just go along with her. This was an American Family Vacation, joking about the National Lampoon movies. So that was me when I was a kid. There's one of my brothers, my other brother, there's my sister. And, we had a very nice childhood. I had a great childhood. I had such a great childhood. It couldn't be better. And that's partly why I was so convinced I want to get married, be just like my parents. What a great life they had. We were always laughing and cracking up. And my mom, like I said, she was the life of the home and was always making jokes. And she was home all the time. She was a homemaker. Whereas my father, he worked a lot. He did work in the house. But, I tell you, what a great life. She loved it. Everybody was very happy with the situation. Here's another vacation. We went to Europe, and that was nice because we got to see things. The biggest thing that I came away with from traveling to Europe was how poor other countries are compared to the United States. Even when we went to England, we stayed in the famous Buswell Hotel. And man, that place was like a dump compared to it. It was like less than a Motel 6 in the United States. We had to share the bathroom at the end of the hallway with all the other people on the floor. And that was the luxury hotel. And then, we went to the houses in Ireland, my father's house again. No carpet, no tiles, just a dirt floor. And at the farmers in Ireland, dirt floor in their house, animals in the house, the chickens, etc. So anyways, that's what it was like. And here's some of my dad's relatives, super nice. And again, we felt sorry for them. They were so poor. All these buildings, sort of run down. And, my brothers and me, we were all real healthy and strong. It's because I think, we had lucky to get good athletic genes from my father and my mother. And also, my mom's sister was a PhD in nutrition. So my mom always left on the kitchen table a whole bunch of carrots and apples and cucumbers and celery. So we were always eating that stuff every day. And then we ate rice and beans all the time for dinner. A lot of times with chicken in it. And, of course, I ate cereal with skim milk all the time. But my brother's really good looking. I could never let a girlfriend see them unless I'd already slept with her or she'd fall in love with my brothers. Here's my father, and this is pretty much how we remember him in the daytime. He had an office in the home. He was a psychiatrist and an internal medicine doctor, so he could see patients in the house, and he liked that. Though they were only patients who he knew pretty well, he was comfortable with them. But that worked out well because he could be home. So he'd work in a clinical hospital in the daytime, and then he'd see patients at home in the afternoon. And it ended up being a good thing. So, here's something funny. When I was at college at Stanford, I lived in the athlete fraternity then, and my father came to it, and there had been a big party the night before. All these guys rode mopeds, like little mini motorcycles, and for some crazy reason, I don't know why it happened, but they threw a whole bunch of stuff off the roof. There was all this broken stuff, broken glass and other stuff in the parking lot of our fraternity. This is the Wall of Fame where all the wrestlers are. So those are the Schultz brothers on top, the world and Olympic champion, our assistant coaches at Stanford, and then the rest is all the guys on the team. Anyways, my father came and he saw my place, and because I had been kind of really lonely in my first few years at Stanford, so lonely it was painful. I never even had a girlfriend from Stanford in 4 years. It wasn't because I didn't want to. It's just because there weren't any girls around. I only asked out one girl. She rejected me. But anyways, I show you this picture though because my father saw how I lived at Stanford after, having grown up in pretty nice circumstances. And he's like, Peter, he said, you don't have to live here, Peter. He goes, this is terrible. This is a disgrace. He goes, this place is a shithole. The place is my fraternity. I'm like, Dad, I love it here. This is my favorite place I've ever been at Stanford. So that was kind of funny. He was shocked that about my place. He kind of looks a little bit like Frank Sinatra there, doesn't he? Okay, so anyways, my dad was just nice. He's just a good, nice person. For example, this is my dad's sister, and her husband died. He actually died during a cardiac cath. They inadvertently dissected his coronary artery, and he dissected the coronary artery on the table, myocardial infarction. They didn't have good stents in back in those days, and he's dead. Okay, so my dad helped pay for the college education of his sister's daughters. He was real generous and nice. I mean, you want to talk about a generous guy. My father would just do stuff like that. Oh, loves his sister, pay for her kid's college education. And that was nice things that he did. And he did a lot of nice things for people like that. Oh, yeah, this is my dad's brother's son. He was United States Olympic team cyclist. Here's my parents, you know, they came to my graduation from medical school. My dad, you know, he tried to stay in pretty good shape, and he would run a lot. And, you know, I think what got him in trouble is, you know, back in those days, people thought fish was good for you. So he was eating like tuna fish or salmon every day for lunch on white bread, and he didn't know any better. You know, it's got oil in it, and the fish is full of fat. He got coronary artery disease. He ended up going for open heart surgery, a cabbage coronary artery bypass graft, when he's about 74. And he did okay with that, but a couple years later, he had a stroke. I think it's because they stapled the left internal mammary artery down to the left anterior descending artery, called a Lehman to the LAD, and that puts it in a fixed position. He was shoveling snow, threw it over his shoulder, and you know, it sticks when it's wet. And he dissected his vertebral artery, had a stroke from that, and then he had to stop working because he liked working. He was working part-time at that time, but that really kind of was real sad for him. And of course, real sad for him too was when my mom died. She died before him from cancer. They played tennis a lot. That made them really happy. They both really enjoyed their time at the tennis club and with their friends there. That was a great thing for them. Mother's Day was like the biggest holiday. And my dad, you know, he was kind of quiet. He enjoyed my mom. My mom was real fun and real extrovert, and she was the life of the party all the time. And you can see how the kids cracking up. Everybody around my mom was always laughing and cracking up. She was always cracking jokes, and a lot of times pretty vulgar and dirty, very funny. She was really nice and funny. And my dad just enjoyed the whole thing, okay? And she would make fun of his friends. They would come over and she would tease them. Oh, they loved it. They all loved talking to my mom. And she would just make fun of all of my dad's doctor friends. She wasn't a doctor. She never even read a book cover to cover that I ever saw her. She's very bright, but she wasn't bookish at all. Anyways, it all just worked out great. It was one of her grandchildren there. One of her grandchildren whom she had helped save when that kid was a baby. And there was another one too. And here she was, just the tough personality of my parents too. My mom at this time had lung metastases, and she probably had brain metastases. We didn't know about it. And they're hiking in the hills there with one of my brothers, man. So, you know, they were always doing stuff together. It was nice. Everybody just enjoyed being with each other. Everybody was close. So anyways, my father was a great role model for me as a man. Good, honest, smart, hardworking, kind, thoughtful, motivated, educated himself. So here's a nice Ralph Waldo Emerson quote about a good life. A person is a success who has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who has gained the respect of the intelligent people and the affection of children, who finds the best in others, who makes the world a better place for others, by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And that can be said of both of my parents. I was very lucky to have such great parents. And here was my father's funeral, and he was then buried next to my mother. So happy Father's Day, Dad. Happy Fathers to all the fathers in the world. Happy Fathers to all the Irish fathers. And thanks for being such a good role model and example to me.